So tomorrow we get a CPI read. So basically inflation data comes out tomorrow. And it's going to have major ramifications for the stock market, the economy, and Trump's global trade war slash tariffs. And I want to go over what's going on. So this is the headlines today. U.S. stocks drop as investors wait on CPI data to set Fed's path. And so the basic gist of it is the market, Wall Street, they really want Fed to cut. Trump wants Fed to cut. I'm not so certain that's necessarily going to happen for sure. Because if inflation data really is ticking up, you definitely don't want to be cutting here. I'd say stand pat and theoretically raise. From the Trump point of view, though, he just sort of wants to make the numbers whatever he wants to do, and we could have another Sharpie situation. Sharpie meaning black pen and just rewrite whatever. This was the headline. Wall Street is concerned about the reliability of government inflation data on the eve of CPI. And if you guys remember, Trump fired the head of the BLS, right? Bureau of Labor Statistics. So basically, if Trump doesn't like the job numbers, he just fires said person. If Trump doesn't like CPI data, right? These kind of things. Does he put in his own person? There's been reports that he's looking to do that. Or just why not appoint yourself, Trump, and just write over what you want in Sharpie and just put inflation to 0, right? I laugh, but that's how stupid this whole thing is. Trump could theoretically do that. I'm making jokes about it, but that's so ridiculous. So, you have people who, and I also base the seriousness on this stuff and remind you, whatever CPI reads that you get, you're going to base cost of living adjustments, right? So veterans benefits, Social Security, these kind of things. So these numbers matter quite a bit. And if Trump, suddenly declares, hey guys, there's no inflation, whatever, then no one gets an increase to keep up with the cost of inflation. So this actually is really important and has wide ramifications for the trustworthiness of our market. So there's that. This was another headline, and I'll try to go through everything. It's hard because everything's so complicated these days. Inflation up or down? What about jobs? The agency that should know is on the rocks. So basically, the BLS is being underfunded by the Trump people. You guys remember Elon Musk comes in, he wants to fire all of these, people that have been doing this stuff for years. And the person who was head of the BLS, so I was unaware of this, but she was at that, basically doing these kind of work for 20 years, a couple decades. So, these kind of people are professionals. They take their job seriously, do it a very long time, and you finally reach the head of the said thing. So several economists came out and defended her, saying, hey, she's trying to do her job and be honest like that. And if you don't like the numbers, that's you, Trump. It's not like people are purposely, putting out bad numbers just because they don't like you. They've been doing this for 20 years. The argument that the Republicans and the Trumpers will make, because they don't provide any evidence that there's any foul play going on over at the BLS, but the thing that they say, well, there was a revision and the numbers changed, and that's all the evidence that you need. But you have to understand how the data is collected. It's very labor intensive. The BLS has to make projections, and then when they finally get accurate data, they try to report as accurate as they can. But again, they're underfunded. And I knew this stuff was coming sort of down the pipeline. I saw that they were making cuts. I also saw that they were purposely sort of, what's the right word to say this, the Trump people here, purposely trying to attack federal employees. And so it's a real shame, the best way to put it. And, one of the reasons why a person, would invest in U.S. markets and USA is because the numbers should be reliable, markets should be stable, all these kind of things. And Trump on an everyday basis is attacking our institutions. And so it's not a good thing. I just can't stress that enough. And, you want good data on this stuff. And so my opinion of these kind of things is fund, and it's not just inflation data, fund health statistics, so we get accurate information on what's going on with the country's health, any number of things, right? Fund the EPA, so you know what's going on with our environment. This stuff takes money. And from Trump point of view is, cut everything that we possibly can and give tax cuts to billionaires and then just make up whatever numbers that they want. So I'm against that. This is a big part of, say, academia or democracy. You just have all these, people in various positions, they're experts in their field, and you respect that. And part of the Trump administration and the sort of Trumpy culture is to discount people who are experts, and in Trump's point of view, just appoint people who are from Florida and, are loyal to you and kiss the ring. So, that's sort of where the U.S. is. I know I talk extensively about this stuff, but you have to connect it all together and understand why this stuff is happening that it is. There was an interesting article here. I'll read it. It says why a top economist discounts Trump's claims that U.S. jobs data are rigged. It actually mentions Nixon. So I'm too young to have lived through the Nixon era. And if you guys are old enough to remember this stuff, please let me know. But they were saying here Nixon used to attack the numbers. Like if Nixon didn't like the numbers, this would be back in July 1971. He would start calling people or the agency names and stuff like that. So this is like a quote, I guess. I know these little, we'll say, betards, I guess you call it. Nixon told his top aides during a taped conversation in the Oval White House, we have a bunch of people in the bureaucracy who want to screw us. This is from Nixon. Here, the labor secretary goes out and does a very good job, and they make him look like a fool. And, and then obviously the Nixon says, I'm not a crook, right? So I know that stuff about Nixon. It was funny because, just talking in terms of this, sort of the human aspect of it, Nixon was a paranoid dude, and you guys wrote some comments, and it's got me thinking about it as well, because those of you who are older remember this stuff. Trump's in that kind of path. So for example, this is a comment, Vincent says, do you think the pictures are talking to him? Okay, referring to former president's pictures in the White House. Another person writes, the pictures are talking to him, mocking him, raging against what he knows is true. He has checked out. Why am I mentioning this stuff? Because you have to understand, like, why is this Trump like acting crazy, like dementia kind of things? I think it's a real possibility that, seriously, like Trump is hearing voices, or he walks around and, Obama, whatever Obama's saying all the time, and from the picture, like, I'm better than you, or you'll never get as, be as popular as me, or, whenever he sees a Bush, because actually Trump, if you don't know, I made a video in the last video, but Trump actually took down the portraits, I guess, of the former presidents and like put them in a place where no one could see them. It's so ludicrous, but I think he's going crazy. The same way, so like I said, same or different than Nixon, I don't know. That's why I mentioned the Nixon stuff, because he's just attacking people if he doesn't like the numbers. So that's why, like, whenever you talk about the markets, you gotta like involve the political stuff. Normally, something like getting inflation data shouldn't be a political thing. You just have professionals in place. They call it various places of work. Hey, are you hiring? Are you firing? What's going on with that? You collect all the data. It's very labor intensive. You put in the numbers and you calculate inflation. I mean, that's, and the problem with in this era in the USA is like everything becomes political. And if you don't like something, you just say, oh, it's all politics. It's really, really frustrating to talk about these things. So, but you do have to mention, because that's sort of where we are right now. Trump, it looks like he's backing down against China. I can see right here, Trump extends China tariff deadline by 90 days, and it just keeps pausing. The rumor on the street is that he wants a meeting with President Xi. All these rumors come out about that, which I'm not shocked. There's nothing shocking about this stuff. Trump will deny. It's like, oh, I don't need to meet President Xi, but if he really wants to, I can go do it. But you best know that I'm sure Trump's trying to call him up every day, and from Trump's point of view, he's trying to make a TV show and get his picture with all the world leaders. That's what Trump is interested in, or getting world leaders to give him gold or whatever. No, seriously, like actual gold. It's so ridiculous, this stuff. But it relates to markets. Like I said, it's so crazy. It's every day. I guess right now the USA is trying to sell more soybeans to China. This is another headline to come out. Trump hopes China will quickly quadruple its U.S. soybean orders. And I think even Trump even tweeted about said thing. What's happening right now is, just want to put this all in perspective. You have inflation that's likely going to go up. Goldman actually came out with a really interesting numbers on that. So this is the headline: U.S. consumers will bear the brunt of the tariff costs, Goldman says. So that's nothing shocking, but they actually give numbers on this. So it's what they say. The net result, a bump to inflation for the rest of the year. So Goldman predicts a year-on-year core PCE rating of 3.2% in December. So one would be inflation's going to go up. I mean, which I think we all know this, but 3.2, so above 3. And this is, the PCE is different than CPI. It's the one the Fed likes to use, but CPI will probably come in roughly the same. Well, depending on what Trump's BLS decides to do, if he puts in his own person. So there's that. And then also, this was an interesting part. Consumers in the U.S. have absorbed an estimated 22% of the tariff costs through June, but their share will rise to 67% if the recent tariff follow pattern of previous levies. Meaning that, it's not shocking, but just give you an idea. Mean that you're gonna the tariffs are gonna be passed on you, and you're gonna pay it. I mean, y'all know this, and this is sort of why it's so crazy all the time when the Trump people always act like you're not gonna pay tariffs. It's weird. And if they lie about that kind of stuff, or they lie about inflation data, I mean, they lie about everything. And so that's sort of what we do in the challenge, is tell you the truth about stuff. And you should know this stuff in your own neck of the woods. I always say the same thing. Don't let Trump tell you, your life, or me tell your life. I just ask you, like, what's going on? Do you feel like your job pays enough to keep up with the prices of where you're at? What's the price of, gas? What's the price of shelter, right? Houses or rent? What's the price of energy? Any number of things. And so when the tariffs, are kicking in, and ultimately, because it takes time for this stuff to kick in, because sometimes the Trump people try to say, wow, we haven't seen the effects of inflation yet. Well, we knew the tariffs were coming, so a lot of people put in a bunch of orders in advance. But now, like, there's no escaping it, so then they're going to pass the cost on you. Like, it's nothing shocking. Just, be honest about this stuff. And that's sort of what's so tricky about this stuff, because then by being honest, then people start calling you political or whatever. And I laugh, but it's like, I'll just say this: there are people who work in the federal government that's their lifelong career, and they do what they can to serve the people and the Constitution. And I have deep respect for people who take these jobs and serve the nation. So it's a shame and a travesty that it started with the whole Musk stuff, attacking federal employees and stuff like that. And just wanted to put that out there. What's going on in the market in particular? There was 2 surveys. So here's the headline on one. Almost every investor in this survey says U.S. stocks are overvalued, as 70% expect stagflation. Okay. So what is this? It'd be like low growth, high unemployment, high interest rate, that kind of thing. And for those of you who lived in the, say, 70s and 80s, you probably already know this kind of world. It's not good. I mean, I think you'd probably know this. This is also from Bank of America. They say 91% of participants indicate the U.S. stocks are overvalued. The highest since proportion of data since going back to 2001, so dot-com bubble kind of stuff. It kind of feels like that to me when your growth in the market is like your AI thing, which is, we're going to build data centers to replace all of you, and that's not going to end well. If Trump keeps cutting the services that people need, and if companies do mass layoffs, it can get really, really ugly. I lived through dot-com. I lived through the great financial crisis, and I know how it is. And my advice for all this kind of stuff is just always save for a rainy day. In this market, it seems like 5% is the magic number. If you can get a guaranteed 5% return anywhere, you take it. You can certainly keep your money in the market, but with all these kind of things, you want to allocate and diversify. That makes sense for you, and it all depends on your time horizon, what your expenses are, etc. So I can't tell you exactly what to do with your money. You got to make that decision, but ultimately, don't put all your eggs in one basket, especially in this market. And things do appear to be overvalued in the economy with the inflation and sort of the way it looks under Trump. It looks to be scary. Let's be honest with you guys. I think you guys know this inherently, but it doesn't mean necessarily you give up on paying attention to stuff. This is when you do want to pay attention to stuff to make sure that you're okay and keeping your mental life sane as best as you can. So I do appreciate your time, guys, and I'll catch you all in the next video.